Hey everybody, welcome. It's Tony Zayas back for another episode of the Tech Founder Show, where we get to hear from fascinating people who are on the cutting edge of technology, doing amazing things in their businesses. And today I'm going to be bringing on Derek Pacqué. He's the founder and CEO of Chexology. And Chexology is building modern check-in and checkout experiences you can trust. And he's been on Shark Tank and has a lot of exciting stuff to share with us. So let me bring him here. So, hey, Derek, how you doing?
Good, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. We're excited to have you. Tell us a bit about Chexology. Just tell us the concept.
Prior to us coming around in situations like coat checking, bag checking, valet, guests would get claim tickets when they checked items, a piece of paper. They were expected to hold on to that. That was literally the trade for your coat or your car. If you lost it, needle in the haystack, too bad. Situations came up. So Chexology's mission is to eliminate that paper claim ticket, and we're looking to replace it with an experience that is fast, trusted, that will allow people that provide these transactions to grow and expand the space.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think makes a lot of sense, right? Whenever I have to check something and I get that little ticket, I'm always like, I better not lose this thing. And there is that level of concern. But I would love to hear what the origin is. Like, were you walking around an airport with like a briefcase full of cash, and you're like, how do I prevent this? This little claim check being responsible for this thing. Like, how did it come to fruition? What was the story behind all of that?
Yeah, so when I was in college, I went to a dance bar, uh, was the person that brought my coat, hid it somewhere, someone found it, they took
Mhm.
it, and it started as simple as, why didn't this bar have a coat check?
Yeah.
If they had it, this probably wouldn't have happened. Uh, so because I was in the business school, I started a coat check business. It was kind of part of the program. I was in the entrepreneurship program. And the pain point that I identified to solve was that these bars didn't have coat check. So, in the process of building that business, trying to make it successful, I realized that paper was just not a good way to operate this type of service at the level I wanted to provide.
And so you had the experience, makes a ton of sense. When did you realize that from, that moment where your your jacket was stolen, right? So you lose your jacket and you realize the process behind that, there's nothing really that reliable or secure. When did you realize that there was a viable business opportunity there? Obviously, then people have initial ideas and then they go and they look at the landscape and they understand that, oh, wow, there's a bunch of solutions out there. But when did you realize that that was a viable opportunity for you to pursue?
The code checking service business or building an application to replace the piece of paper.
I guess both. Because did it start as the code checking service?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd love
So
to hear about that, and then even the evolution into into Chexology and kind of what it is today.
so that's actually a good question. When I first kind of identified that, oh, there's a potential opportunity to make money checking coats at the bars, one of my biggest things was, well, will people use it? Was this just a me problem? Will people actually pay to check their coats in Bloomington, Indiana? Would it be profitable? So those were questions that were kind of lingering. And it started, the first stem was just asking friends, right? Hey, if you go to the bars, you either freeze in line or you bring your coat and stash it. Um, if there was a coat check for $2-3, would you check your coat? And I was getting a lot of yes, not only a lot of yeses, but like, oh, that's a great idea.
Mm.
So that started it, but everyone could just say yes. Would they actually use it? Was sort of kind of on my mind. I don't know. Um, then when I kind of brought it up to the professors as part of my project, the professors were very excited about it too, and they were willing to help. Okay, we need to open up an LLC. So then pressure started coming from not just my friends to start it, but then the professors. And then sort of the final trigger was, someone's like, you got to go talk to the bar owners, see if they are willing to let you open it. And I just went in on a Sunday, looked over at one of the bar owners that was just sitting there at the bar, and I said, why don't you provide a code check? And he looked at me and he was like, huh, it's a good idea. And I was like, if you pull one right there, I think we can make some money. And he goes, can you start Thursday? So that was sort of the final pressure that's like, oh, this is happening, right?
Yeah.
I got to do this. So it was a lot of pressure coming from different people, which ultimately got me to pull the trigger and start to do. So that was for the code check service business. As far as building an app to replace the paper, that was solving my own problems from being a code check service provider. I just was week in, week out dealing with claims, leftover codes, not knowing where to pick them up, long lines. Just this paper was not doing a good job allowing me to provide a high quality service.
Yeah.
So when I typed in code check system in Google, nothing came up. So it kind of was, if I want to scale this business, grow it outside of Bloomington, I think we're going to need a system to really solve this problem.
Very cool. What was the timeline from, the idea to the inception of code checks into the app?
Yeah, so October 2010 was when I launched the Hoosier Code Check in Bloomington, Indiana. The business plan I wrote second semester, so after winter break, 2011, first quarter, was a business plan called Code Checks, COATCHEX, and it was how I was going to expand the Hoosier Code Check to multiple cities. Out of that 70-page business plan, there was one paragraph about I need a system, which ended up becoming pretty much the focal point of Code Checks, which in 2011, we built the MVP, we got it on Shark Tank. And then after that exposure, it really accelerated the focus to the system, and the technology is the most valuable thing around what you're doing. If you enable other service providers and in-house providers to do it well, there's a big opportunity to scale there.
That's awesome. What was the Shark Tank experience like?
It's definitely surreal. What you see on TV compared to what happens in real life is very different. So it's pretty nerve-wracking going into the Shark Tank. But once you're in there and you kind of get through the little elevator pitch, it's kind of fun. You could tell it's a reality TV show, like they're all playing characters, but it definitely kind of created a really cool story. So definitely very helpful for the business. And as far as just, people knowing that we're solving this problem and we're the ones doing it, it really helped kind of get our business to the next level.
I would just be curious, was there like one, at least, maybe one takeaway that like the being on Shark Tank, like the sharks feedback perhaps gave you like realization about your business, or what any takeaway from that experience? Because obviously it's a cool experience, it's great exposure, but was there any like business insight that you pulled from that was like something that kind of opened your eyes a little bit?
Yeah, I think the best advice I got was go out and validate the technology. Build, as you're iterating and building the tech, go prove it out. Go make sure that's what customers want. Beforehand, when I was 21 years old, it was kind of in my head a waterfall model. Build it all, release it, roll it out. And they kind of really pushed, like, make this iterative, agile development, and that will really help you identify what is needed in a broader market. So that was some good advice. And then I think the next thing was that, think further than just code check, right? We'd already started thinking about other verticals where claim tickets, created problems. But I think what came out of that was, like, if you're looking to really grow a scalable business, seasonality is not fun. So it kind of helped hone in and then validated our need to kind of think through other products as well.
So I'm curious, what are some of the those other verticals? Like, where are you guys focused nowadays since you've grown?
Yeah, so Code Checks kind of was our first valid product, and that kind of took us through about 2013, was really to prove it out for what we knew. Along the way, we actually had a silent disco company. It was called Quiet Events, and they reached out to me and said that they were currently grabbing people's IDs when they were lent silent disco headphones and organizing them sequential, by last name, and it was just a long process. They were taking a lot of liability, and they were actually giving out claim tickets to find people's IDs, and they weren't able to scale their business as far as size of events. They could kind of give out 300 headphones max, but these operators like, I want to do a 6,000 person party on the beach. So it was actually an inbound that was like, your system will work perfectly for this, for not just checking in items, but lending them out and then getting them returned back to us. So it kind of inverted the processes. It's not just businesses that store things, but businesses that lend things out. This product can work for both situations. So we started building that, and we realized, well, Coach Checks, a name for a company, doesn't really work for silent disco headphone companies. So we created a company called Chexology, which brought in Coach Checks and kind of broadened the use of the software to any item being checked in and out. And so we started there, and then during COVID, we actually, with all events shutting down, right? No nightclubs, concert halls, museums, no one was checking coats. We took that opportunity to actually build a product for the hotels for luggage storage. We knew that getting hospitality back up and running and people traveling again and going to hotels would be sort of a first phase before big organized packed events would really take off. So now we also have a bell desk product for luggage storage at hotels.
Very cool. So so you're the one that founded it. Were you solo when you launched?
Yeah, it was the Hoosier Coat Check was just me with some of my college friends, working the Coat Check, and it kind of went from there.
No, that's cool. I would love to hear a bit about. I know you mentioned, you were in business school, and it sounds like you talked to some of your professors and had, mentors. Perhaps we like to talk in this show a lot. Hearing the importance of mentors and like a network to talk to other people, bounce ideas. People who've been there. So how do you stay, like, who do you rely on? Do you have a network of people, a forum, a mastermind? Do you have mentors? Kind of what does that support look like, and how has it maybe changed over the years?
Yeah. Once I moved to New York, I really started to kind of grow my network of not just startup co-founders, other people that are in the same situation as me. So in Indianapolis, I was very well connected with others who were kind of getting their businesses off the ground, and whether they were in similar stage or further stage, I always thought those conversations were the best, right? Learning from their war stories, sharing war stories, figuring out the doing steps versus the strategic thinking steps, and how do you kind of manage long-term and short-term needs. So really working with other founders and meeting up with them on a regular basis is super helpful. When I got to New York, I started to grow my advisor network, and eventually investor network as well. People that have really gotten it and scaled businesses and have different kind of viewpoints. So, one of my biggest mentor, his name is Kumar Esguela, and he actually comes from an operational finance real estate background. And anytime I feel like I'm in like this short term, oh my God, things are not going to work out, he helps me think very long term. He always uses analogies about building a massive sky riser, right? And all the different pieces and how long it takes. But if everything comes together, you got a great product. So he keeps helping me get out of the weeds of like, oh, COVID, it's the end of our business. He's like, no, long term, what can we do? How can we pivot? So having people that would just, it doesn't have to be necessarily in the same space, but people that have done it before. He's more of an operational finance mind, and I'm more of a sales marketing kind of extroverted mind. So finding people that also have diverse traits compared to yours is also super, super helpful, is what I've learned.
That's great. What does your team look like today, since you guys have been around for a bit?
Yeah, so we have couple different big departments. Our engineering team, we have an engineering team that we acquired a consultancy out of Indianapolis, and they became our in-house engineering team. They were called Fretless. We then hired a product manager and designer to support that engineering team. We have an operations team here in New York, and then sales and marketing is now kind of remote, sort of all over the country. we haven't, and then just back office accounting as well.
Wow, that's cool. So do you have do you come from do you have a technical background? Like, are you a technical founder, or is that something that part of that? It sounds like you acquired that team of engineers. I would love to hear about how you brought the technology piece to life.
Yeah, I definitely am not an engineer. So my background was in business. I've always been very entrepreneurial as far as a mindset, but I definitely had to, over the years, learn to be technical,
Hmm.
to to be able to evaluate and bring in a team of technical people. But it's definitely been a big weakness, and it's taken me a long time to gain those skills and that understanding to earn trust, from engineering teams. So that was something that, because I didn't have a technical co-founder, took a while to kind of develop that and bring that team in house. That was one thing I wish earlier on I had found a more technical co-founder, but I didn't. So it took a while to really get that team kind of involved and fit into the culture of sort of more of a business mindset, sales marketing mindset.
Yeah. What any lessons learned? Just I know the landscape, especially now, it's really hard to find good developers and engineers and people that you can rely on. So we hear that a lot from founders that are trying to scale up a team. Do you have any suggestions or ideas on how to go about doing that?
Yeah, you start with one person you can really trust,
Mm.
right? Who is you know well respected, has a great history, and is able to lead a team. So I was fortunate in finding a match in our head of engineering, Davey, who was you know the co-founder of Fretless. So that was what he was doing, was building an engineering shop. So I got lucky in finding someone that I trust, who is able to create that culture, build that team, recruit that team, and onboard them. I know that everyone he brings in is well vetted, and he's making much better bets than I ever could with bringing on new team members. So finding that one person is sort of the starting point, and just letting them ride, letting them do their thing.
That's cool. Did you have any challenges with doing just that, like own an area, kind of be that expert, and let them do their thing? A lot of founders, especially when they start out, they are the business and then they grow over time, but they're still kind of in control everywhere. But at a certain point, if you want to scale the business, you have to put people in place that could lead the different areas and let them do their thing. You might be involved a little bit more here than there, but you need to let leaders lead. Did you ever have challenge with that? Was that a learning, kind of growth process for you, or what did that look like for you?
100%. It's yeah, I'm sure everyone who's just so involved and is so passionate when they start a business and is required to wear all the hats.
Yeah.
um, it's sometimes hard to notice, like, oh, this hat I can actually, you're better with this hat on, right? It's you know, you do this, and what's the next hat that I actually need to wear that's more important than the hats we had before?
Yeah.
It's a very hard process that you have to get out of the day to day. And when you're grinding, that's very difficult to do. So it is something that has come with time, learning how to get out of it, but it's not easy. And still today, I see myself in the weeds in areas where I'm like, I wish I could just learn faster to get out of the weeds, learn faster to get out of the weeds. And I think it's an ever evolving process, that, yeah, it's very difficult.
So, what would you say? How has your role as founder, being being your business, kind of being a one man concept, turning it into a business, growing it over time, spinning out different iterations, software, so on and so forth. How has your role evolved? I'm sure it's been pretty drastic, but what did it look like then versus how it is today, and what was that evolution like?
Yeah, it's less day-to-day doing of a diverse set of tasks. It's more um, direction giving, storytelling, sharing vision, presenting and connecting dots together to show how things are possible and achievable, and getting buy-in.
Mhm.
And it's not just from internal stakeholders like the team, but big clients and prospects and investors, right? It's showcasing that, we have a track record. Here's a long-term vision and plan, and it's achievable with this team. Whether it's a big sale, a capital raise, or recruiting a top talent, I've found that, the work I'm doing is more involved with longer cycle type achievements as opposed to shorter day-to-day achievements.
And how have you settled into that role? Is this something you enjoy more, kind of the strategic planning and providing that direction, or do you miss being in the trenches, or are you happy to be where you're at? From that, human perspective, are there pieces of it that you miss, or that you would like to be involved with more than you are?
It's a great question. It's different, I'll tell you that. It's there's a comfort in going back and being in the weeds and in the trenches, but then there's also a relief of I don't necessarily have to be in the trenches anymore. So there's a comfort that's missing, but I think for growth, it's something that I'm excited about. Right, is continually to develop this new set of skills that's needed to get from, instead of the 0 to 1, the 1 to 2. So it's sort of like I'm looking at it almost like a startup, learning all these new skills to do the 1 to 2, and I'm kind of approaching it that way. Is different mindset, different different need to grow a business. Do I miss it? No, I don't think I miss it. Was it fun? Yeah, there was fun. There was both funs and times of not fun. But I think ultimately it's exciting to start thinking through the next stage, not just in the business but in life. So that answers the question.
That's awesome. I do want to get to talk about the software, the technology, and kind of what's behind it. But before we do that, you mentioned investors a couple times. What did the fundraising process look like for you? I'm guessing that you guys have been funded. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So, Shark Tank, we got an offer from Mark Cuban. We didn't take the offer. We didn't like the valuation.
Pretty cool to be able to say that, right?
Yeah. It's also, people thought you're crazy not taking a deal from Mark. But what that led to was the exposure that Shark Tank gives behind the story is it brought a lot more interest into what we were doing, and also brought some validation because Mark Cuban was interested. So after that, we quickly realized New York is the place to grow this business. This is where the most interest is coming from these type of transactions. So moving there was a big step, and we raised capital from investors in the New York marketplace that could help us kind of grow the business in New York. So we closed the seed round at that time, and we've really, from that group of investors, when we need more capital, have been able to get it from those investors. We haven't had to distract ourselves to get investments and create new rounds, from new investors and create new relationships. So it's been helpful as far as, we've been able to focus on building and growth and less, around raising capital. And I think, eventually there'll be a milestone where it'll make sense to raise from some strategics. But at this time, it's been nice to have that group of investor family that we do here in New York to kind of get us to that next level.
What was your, when you were looking to raise those funds and you were pitching to investors, what did your schedule look like? We hear so often that, fundraising is like a full-time job in and of itself. And as a founder, you basically have to figure out how to balance that with everything else you do as a CEO or whatever your role is in your business. What was it like for you?
Yeah, it was, when you plan your week or your day, you look at the top things you're trying to accomplish. Raising capital was definitely the top thing, but there were other things that still needed to get completed. We couldn't just shut down, the customers we had to keep them happy. We had, we wanted to get new customers to keep the traction going. So ultimately, it was definitely, as far as when someone says a full-time job, I'm guessing they mean about 40 hours a week. It took about that much amount of time. But as a founder, you find extra time above that 40 hours to keep the rest going. So it's just like any event, leading up to it, it's a lot more work. And then right up to the deadline, it just keeps adding up. But ultimately, it's just one part of the function of being, the CEO and founder. So you can't let it stop other routes.
So just while we're on the topic, how do you balance things? How do you create some work life, let's say, harmony? If it's not, because it's usually not very balanced, but how did you get through that? Working these probably ridiculous hours. I'm sure at different phases beyond just the fundraising. I'm sure you've had dealt with that all along. But how do you keep yourself sane and take care of yourself at the same time as keep pushing hard in the business?
Yeah. Routines are helpful. The life and the work-life balance I was living when I was 22, 23, 24 is much different than now being in my 30s. So, at the time, I was just so into it, right?
Yeah.
I woke up, I wanted, until I went to bed. There was nothing else that really kind of drove me as much. Now I have a wife, I'm looking at, planning for a family. Things are different now. So it's just managing sort of the different priorities. And I think, we're at a point now where I don't have to do everything myself. I have a team, right? So I think at the time I wasn't even thinking about anything else really. I'd blow off some steam on the weekends, maybe go work out when I could. I'd eat when I could, but my mind was just so focused on making this successful. Like there was no other option than getting this off the ground. So I think if you're in that headspace, it's there's a goal, you got to achieve it, and that's all you're thinking about. You don't even notice these other things, and balance isn't as important at the time. So I think that also, like stepping back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was working those ridiculous hours. But at the time, I was having so much fun doing it because it was a challenge, right? It was stimulating me, and I think back to my intern days doing database entry stuff and like waiting for it to turn, the clock to hit 5. Like that never happens in a startup. So
It's pretty cool. So I would love to dive into the software and hear kind of, what does this look like to kind of secure these, in code checks, you said hospitality, so on and so forth. What is it you guys have put together? What's some of the underlying tech beneath it? I'd be curious to hear what, you could share on that.
yeah. So the first step we always do is we become a code checker, we become a bellman, right? And we learn what their process is like with paper. So once we have that experience, we then think about, okay, with this paper process, what are the biggest pain points? What are the things slowing down? Like, what are the things that guests and the staff care about? And then how can we solve them with technology? So for code check, the biggest problems were these bottlenecks at the end of the night. One person out of 20 loses a claim ticket. They bottleneck everyone else. It's like, oh, that's my black coat. And instead of being able to, if no one had lost that claim ticket, you can get everyone out in maybe 10 minutes. It'll take 40 minutes. So we realized that is one of the biggest problems. How can tech solve that? People won't forget their phone number. Your phone number is your claim ticket. We send them a text with their claim number. If their phone dies, they lost their claim ticket. They just provide their phone number. How do you prevent false claims and theft? You're constantly reimbursing someone claiming this was their jacket or that was, this happened or that happened, but there's no proof. So we take pictures. When someone types in their phone number, we get a picture of them. Every time we tap a tag up to our tag reader that's connected to an iPad, the back camera takes a picture of the item. So now we have pictures of what was checked in. And speed is really important. So our patents and our process patents are around how we capture guest information, at the same time as we collect information about what's being tagged in the items. And these are a simultaneous process. So because ripping a ticket is fast. So the innovation comes around creating sort of these value props. Ours were, we want it to be faster than the claim ticket. We want it to be trusted more than the claim ticket. We want it to have a return on investment that beats the claim ticket. And so that's where we just kind of evaluate these pillars. Where are we winning? Where do we need to work and focus energy? So technology, iPads are much more expensive than paper. So we had to really prove out around, well, what's the return on investment? What's the value of your one baseline is you spend X amount buying paper. How much are you spending on claims? How about cash skimming because you're not tracking the cash? So we have to present this value prop, and it's different. Code checking, a claim ticket costs 3 to 5 cents. Luggage storage, I mean, these tickets cost up to 18 cents. So, just a text message costs way less than 18 cents. So our value prop in the luggage storage space is, oh my gosh, you're spending so much money on luggage storage paper. We're just less expensive. And we provide a paperless experience where guests can get texts and request items be brought to their room. We're more organized. So we just kind of understand the user's experience, what their pain points are, both from operationally and, from a monetary standpoint, and we come to them with a no-brainer reason to move forward. And we just keep tackling that for every different operation.
It's awesome. That's really cool. I love the innovation there. Um, what other like use applications are there that maybe you guys haven't pursued just yet, but I imagine there's got to be a lot of different ways that you can use that type of technology.
Yeah, I think we're trying to, we really are good at coats and bags. We started with rentals that are one type of item, a silent disco headphone. But if you think about rentals, you go to bikes, you kind of expand to beach equipment, beach rentals. From coats and bags, you're looking at cars next. So if you look at a claim ticket for a coat check versus luggage storage versus valet, there's more information because the more valuable the item, the more you have to document. So we just think about how does a picture of a front of a car, for example, pull the same information that before they were writing, oh, it's a Mercedes, it's black, license plate. So we're kind of looking at our product roadmap and the features to build. And then once we build a new feature, what verticals does it allow us to solve the problems for? So, I mean, what's crazy to me is when you check your car with a valet versus when you rent a car, why is that claim ticket so different, right? The rental companies make you fill out 8 forms, right? They are really documenting, the car, and they're getting your credit card. But how come when a valet person takes your car, you're not getting their credit card in case they scratch your car? So our vision is, can we make this back and forth more balanced, right? Mm-hmm. Build trust between the guest and the customer, make it quick, reduce lines, and there's just so much opportunity to make it better. It's still, when you think about renting a car or valeting your car or checking a bag, there's always this kind of uncertainty, like, will I get it back? Will something be missing? Mm-hmm. Right? There's a massive stigma in the world around checking things with other people you don't know. And if we could alleviate that, trust Chexology, right? We will make sure, we have proof from both sides. We will make sure things are fair. And we really believe if we can do that, we can make it quick, fair, and trusted. More businesses will sprout up. Wow, I can provide these services in places that before I would never have thought to do it because there wasn't a way to do it well, to create this trust to customers where they can go somewhere and be like, oh, I can borrow this, I can store this, and I don't have to worry. So our hope is that if you look at it's called the bailment marketplace. Bailment is where you give instead of like a sale, you're giving something over between a business and a customer for a period of time and then expect to get it back in the same condition or better. And our hope is that if we look at the total market share of bailment 10 years from now, we've really helped grow it. And people trust this space a lot more.
Sounds like a pretty no-brainer of a value proposition, right? You're going to these companies and saying it's going to cost you less, it's going to be more secure, right? You're going to have a trail. So how do you take that to market? What are some of the marketing initiatives and tactics you guys have used to be successful?
We're storytellers. So I think, it starts out with becoming an expert, sharing the case, how you've, like, for example, the Museum of Modern Art. We were able to put in systems that actually queue conveyors. Conveyors bring your coats to the front. And staff can focus on the guest experience as opposed to turning around, running, and trying to find your coat. And so building out a system where we took hour-long lines on Fridays down to 3 minutes, sharing that story, and then communicating it to every museum, right? And saying, hey, look what we did for the Museum of Modern Art. Look at how we've changed this experience, and targeting similar, similar roles, similar companies. And we love LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a great place for our space. We found that we're able to make a lot of connections. A lot of people are, oh, I understand that story. I'm dealing with that problem. I relate. They reach out and we consult them and we show them how our solutions can provide those value props: speed, trust, no brainer, value proposition from a price standpoint.
Love it. That's awesome. What do you mentioned, roadmap, and I love your approach to that. You're saying like for each feature that you add, you're looking at, what market opportunities exist, and it might be in different places, right? Different verticals and applications. So what is the next, let's say 12 months, in your mind, what does that look like for you guys?
We're very focused on the hospitality space. So whatever they're checking, wherever they're still using paper, we're kind of looking at what are their biggest pain points in hospitality. We've really done well with nightlife and entertainment, like concert halls. We've done good with museums and conventions, all very seasonal, right? Very winter seasonal needs. So hotels, very summer time traffic that kind of complement the winter seasonality of these different verticals. So our top line KPI right now for the company is ending seasonality. Can we have month over month increase of claim tickets eliminated? And so over the next 12 months, very focused on the hospitality and hotel space. And so it started with, all right, we already have a coat check solution. Now we also have a luggage storage solution. They identified package storing, that there's a lot of problems with people's packages coming in early, people not knowing if they're there. So we use our product to check in packages and then give them back to customers when they get there or when it's arrived. So there's really no system for doing that well. They're talking now about some of them do a lot of rentals on properties, resorts, some check golf bags. It's crazy the different things that they check. But as we build relationships, we ask them, where are you still using paper? Whether it's valet, checking things on cabanas on your beach. What is it that you're still using a paper written process to do it? And can we help make it better?
That's awesome. So Derek, I'm going to ask you one last question here in a second. But before we wrap up, I would love to just give you an opportunity to share with anybody that's watching the show, where can people go to learn more about Chexology, of course, with you, learn more about what you're up to and follow your journey.
Yeah, if LinkedIn is probably where we're most active. At Chexology, Chexology. Interact with us there. I'm Derek Pacqué, DEREK PACQUE. Find me on LinkedIn. It's also my handle on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. But definitely LinkedIn is where we've found we can really build some great business relationships, and it's where we kind of focus our efforts the most.
Yeah, that's awesome. We do have a question that came in here, so I'll pop it up. But it's storytelling to promote brands and validate their services is a powerful tool. Are there other examples of you doing this in the hospitality industry?
Yeah, so we just actually one of our biggest new clients is Circa Casino in Las Vegas. It's a brand new casino, very modern. It's like they just put it on the old strip. It looks like a spaceship just landed there. So they really fit. Our core values are very similar. They're all about how can tech improve the guest experience? How can they be very proactive? Like when you get there, they want everything to be organized and you're not reacting the entire trip. And when we met this team that was building, this hotel and launching their systems, it just kind of fit. So what we did is we actually brought a film crew out there and we told the story. We actually did a comparison of someone's experience going to a hotel and checking luggage with a piece of paper, the entire journey side by side with if you're using our system. So you can see the same guests going through the experience of needing their luggage brought up to their room and getting it returned with our system compared to what happens with paper. And then we also allowed all the users at Circa to tell their story, from the guest services team to the managers to the supervisors, on why we've helped them perform the service better. So we let our customers tell the story as well, because we find that in their expressions, they all have little reasons based on their role and what they care about for why they like the system. So we let them tell the stories, and then we just share their stories. So going through the journey from the guest side, but also the stories from the staff side, in hospitality, has been super impactful.
So I love that. It's a great example. Earlier in my career, I was in the digital signatures and a little bit into the cybersecurity space. And I was always amazed that people were always so surprised to hear about how so many like identity theft and those type of crimes were low tech, right? So it's an employee flipping through files that they have access to, paper. And technology solves so much of that. And a lot of times people think technology is, you can get hacked. You can, but a lot of that low tech stuff is. So I love that you're kind of demonstrating the difference between the paper example and then electronic, what you guys have in place. And I'm sure that's pretty compelling to see. So really cool stuff.
It's just crazy to me that you can check a car or a bag. They give you this tiny piece of paper, which no one holds receipts anymore, right? In their wallets. Like it's just not. Before, everyone was keeping all their checks in paper, like in the 1920s, right? So it's crazy to me this is everything else in your wallet, paper's going away, cash, everything else. But the expectation to still hold on to a claim ticket. And if you just drop it by accident, because you're so used to not keeping the paper, anyone can pick it up off the ground and hand it over, and they get your car, your bag. It's that easy. You just see in a nightclub a coat check ticket on the ground, you pick it up, hand it over, it's yours. And it's just crazy to me that in 2020, operations are still doing that. Like, it's just, I'm blown away why they would still do that. So
for sure,
that's what drives me, is like, I can't believe it's still happening out there.
I love hearing from tech founders like you that take, an everyday challenge that so many people are facing and really take take innovation, technology to drive just a brand new solution. It's always fascinating to see. So love hearing your story. Last question for you today here, Derek. We'd like to ask our guests, if you were to go back in time, so let's say back before even Coat Checks, right? You were able to sit down with your younger self at Indiana, right? And have a cup of coffee and give one piece of advice. What would it be?
Focus on people. Focus on finding, you don't need to do everything yourself. Invest time in finding the right people to surround yourself with, the right team members. In the long term, it will pay off. Give away equity, think about what their needs are. You build a stellar team as quickly as you can, and they will speed everything up. So I wish someone had told me how important it was to really invest more amount of time all the time finding good team members. Because when you find them and you're like, where have you been all my life? It's kind of like, I wish I had found you 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago. Yeah. So, that'd be the piece of advice.
It's awesome. We often hear, from our founders that are guests, that the investors will say, the importance of team. And, you can bring the most fascinating innovation to life via technology, but it's really the team behind that that's going to drive it. And so up there.
Absolutely.
So awesome. Well, Derek, thank you so much for your time here today. This has been fantastic. We appreciate you spending this time with us. And to our guests, thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you again next time. Until then, everybody, have a great week. Take care.
Appreciate it, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.